You're listening to Zap Night's Zap Chats, a monthly video game discussion. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Zap Chats for October. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm your co-host, Kaylee.
So, what have you been playing lately, Kaylee?
Animal Crossing.
Nice. I have literally not touched a video game since Final Fantasy X, which, to be fair, hasn't been that long, but, you know, a couple weeks goes by quick, and I'm very busy this month, so I don't know what I'm going to be able to do for video games this month. We're definitely going to have a podcast for November 1st. I'm just not entirely sure of what it's going to be. We originally were talking about playing Pocahontas, but Lori's beat a few games too that I could easily play and beat while we're taking a trip, so we're going to be on a train for a few hours. So maybe I can play a game on the train and get that done, and then me and Lori can do a quick podcast about that. So if we do that, it's probably going to be Mario Golf, or I don't know the name of the other one. I don't know the name of the other one. It's like a adventure puzzle game, kind of like, I don't know, when we used to play Zork, where basically you just wander around trying to fix puzzles and figure stuff out. But yeah, that's really been it. Final Fantasy X, we just got off of. That was a lot of fun. We talked about, we kind of talked about side quests, which is something that I want to talk about today, and what makes for a
good quality side quest.
Like, side quests as a whole, like an overall side quest / extra content for a video game, excluding DLC. We've kind of talked about DLC and our thoughts about that before, but I specifically want to talk about side questing and extra content, like post-game content, maybe, is how you would describe it.
Stuff that's not pertinent to the main story.
Right,
just side stuff that you can do, that there's extra dialogue, whatever.
And this kind of stems from the way that Final Fantasy X ends. Like, towards the beginning of the game, and the majority of the game really, is very linear. And then once you get on the airship, it opens up to be able to do all these things. And that's kind of where this is stemming from, because those things are not super important to the story in any way. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about was maybe Tokyo Game Show, which was recently. It was okay. There wasn't anything major announcement-wise that came out of it that I was super interested in. At least, like, Square Enix's display. There was, I don't know, I guess the Strangers of Paradise thing was kind of neat, that they're actively listening to the fans and tweaking stuff, which is really nice. I think they showed off another trailer for, what's that game? Forsaken?
Oh, yeah.
So, and that looks pretty cool. But I'm eager to know when that's going to be released. Like, I want that right now.
That looked pretty cool.
But a lot of these games, it looks like they're coming early next year. And even from a Final Fantasy 16 standpoint, which we didn't get a whole lot of information, but the director of 16 talked with, had a conversation with the original Final Fantasy guy, whatever his name is. Yeah. And I guess that game is pretty much done. All they're working on now is, like, side story stuff, side quest stuff, and like tweaking and upscaling everything to match.
I have to say, it feels like, I don't know if time just is going faster for me now that I'm older, but it feels like some of these games are getting pushed out a little bit earlier than I expected it to.
I think for Square Enix, they got such a bad reputation for delaying and waiting years and years. I mean, look at 15. 15 took forever to come out because they announced it too early. And I think that that's the problem, is that these games that need to be in development for 5+ years need to start working on them ASAP and don't say crap about it until you're ready to release it. Like I think that Square Enix had just like didn't think about that. They just wanted to give people information. Well, by doing that, you're setting expectations for stuff that may not even get released, you know? I mean, look at how like Final Fantasy Versus 13, it turned into Final Fantasy 15, but like the fans have known about it for all these years and, you know, nothing came about it. So like, you know, that I think that's Square Enix's problem, specifically Square Enix. A lot of other companies have similar issues, but Square Enix has been real bad over the past few years. I think they're finally starting to get a grip on it and only announcing stuff when they're ready to release it. And I think that Nintendo is really the lead on that. I mean, some of these games, you don't even know that they're being worked on, and then they're like, yeah, releasing this summer. Like, what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that because I don't even want to know until it's ready to release.
Right,
like, I don't want to be excited about it in any way until it's ready to be released. So I like that better.
Speaking of Square Enix, what did you think about Chocobo GP?
Oh my gosh, yes. When I watched that, what's funny is, okay, Chocobo G, is it GP?
Chocobo Race, I think it's Chocobo Racing GP. It is GP, but
Grand Prix, yeah. No, I think it's just maybe it is Chocobo Racing. No, I don't know. Anyway,
Chocobos.
Yes, it is. It's like the sequel to Chocobo Racing for the PlayStation, and we played the crap out of that game when it was released. We rented it all the time from the video store when that was a thing. I have a copy of it. I only have the disc. At some point, at some point I'd like to get the case, but yeah, I loved that game. We should sit and play it. That would be a lot of fun. But yeah, they're making a sequel to that, Chocobo GP.
They've got 9 content. Final Fantasy 9 content.
Like the backgrounds, the stages look phenomenal.
Alexandria and Gold Saucer.
Gold Saucer, yes.
Yeah.
I cannot wait.
But
it's gonna be great.
I just appreciate, I feel like 9's been getting a little bit of the sweet treatment lately, because you've got Steiner and his specific car. You saw Vivi and he actually had an Oglop car. It was supposed to be Sid from 9.
Aww.
It was really cute. And I was thinking about this, how great potential this game has for additional non-important DLC, like having different characters downloadable,
That's true,
and different carts and different courses, if you will. So I hope if they're gonna do DLC for a game, this is a great game to do DLC for,
because it's not relevant to anything, right? Yeah, no, it looks like a lot of fun, and I absolutely think we should sit down sometime soonish.
I have to get this game. My kids saw the trailer for it and immediately was like, I want that now. Like, it's not even out yet. He's like, I want to play it right now.
Me too. Me too, son. Oh man, yeah. So I mean, otherwise there was a few other like small announcements. They're making I don't know the names of the games, and I didn't bother looking them up because things aren't all that important, but they have a couple, like there's a little pixel sprite game that they're coming out with that is similar to Octopath Traveler. Yeah. So, I mean, it looks similar to that. There's, like, a card game that they're releasing. The funny thing about this card game that they're releasing is there's, like, no information about it. They just keep showing the same trailer of, like, cards being laid out, but there's no gameplay, there's no characters. It's just, like, this epic universe, and there's cards, like, being laid on the table, and they're all face down, so it's not like you're getting any hint to what this game is about at all. So I don't know what that's going to be.
I love playing Goldfish.
It reminded me of Final Fantasy Type 0 and how Ace has he uses cards. We need to play that game. Yeah. Really. That's going to be a great game. So anyway, let's talk about our side quest thing.
Well, what was the problem we had with Final Fantasy X?
Okay, so Final Fantasy X, like I said, you finish the main game more or less. And it becomes this open world game where you can do all the extra content. But when you sit down and actually look at the extra content, there's nothing there that really means anything to the game as a whole. Like, yeah, you can get better equipment, but like the better equipment is it's always optional, but it really doesn't help that much to like beat the game.
Right.
Like there's no driving force to do any of the Final Fantasy X extra content. And on top of that, they're not even that fun. So why put yourself through all the trouble of doing all the extra content when it's tedious and boring, and like, why is it even there then?
I agree with you to a certain extent, because when I do side quests, I want it to be story driven, relevant to someone's story, just some kind of actual story behind it. I don't like it when it's just a grind fest of being the best,
right,
maxing out everything. However, I know that people are completionists, and I respect that. It's just, I to a certain degree, like Final Fantasy IX, my favorite game. I at one point would like to collect all of the treasures and, you know, beat the game and do all the trophies and make all those, you know, beat all the side quests and all that stuff, because I love that game. And I think for people, for specifically 10, they love this game. I think it's strange that they put all these side quests expecting that, but I think for someone who is a completionist and likes playing this game, maybe it is something that they enjoy doing as far as maxing everything out and getting your highest potential. It's just, what a grind fest.
Well, and I think that that's my complaint, is that if you're going to put all this extra content, make it fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, collecting the in 10, collecting the monsters, that's okay. Like, to re-explore all the areas that you've previously explored and try and find all the monsters, that's fun. But when it comes to like the chocobo racing crap and the dodging the lightning bolts crap, there's a lot of things that are just tedious and stupid that it's like, why did they even put this in there? Like, okay, the super bosses, I understand. If you're going to put all this work into building up your characters, you want to have something to destroy. I get that. But I want, specifically for me, the kind of side quests that I want is something that has something to do with the story in some way.
So, like, additional dungeons?
An additional dungeon that has story to it, or meaning to the world.
Which, they did have one, which was the Omega Ruins, as far as we're considering.
The Omega Ruins, yeah, and it did have some story and lore behind it, with Omega being this... He was a summoner, an exiled summoner, but he liked to be underground, and then he eventually turned into a monster or whatever, and he summoned all the monsters that are in there to protect it. I don't know.
Did you do the butterfly side quest?
I mean, I did a few a few of the butterfly things. But
most of those, you do those things to get the extra items, which unlocks all this other stuff.
Right.
But what I was going to say is, it sounds like maybe more specifically, they're poorly planned mini games.
Well, yeah, no, it's bad. And I don't mind them being there. But again, if you're going to have us go through the grind of stuff, I want content to the world.
Well, okay, let's take Chocobo, the Chocobo racing game. It was very frustrating and difficult. That would have been potentially, if it was more fun, would that have been worth the side quest? Even if it's just for grind.
I think what they should have done is they should have had it a mandatory thing, kind of like Blitzball. But I think if they were going to have... I think that it would have been fun to have you walk into the Comlands and be greeted by that Chocobo person. Like, do the lore thing, like, in the story, like you normally do, but then be greeted by the Chocobo person and say, hey, you know, it's really hard to find your way to the other side. You could take a Chocobo, but you have to raise a Chocobo first, or you have to help me train a Chocobo in order to make it to the other side. And then do the like little mini game thing that's kind of frustrating and stupid, but then you make it to the other side and you're done. And then you've played it, you've experienced it, and yeah, it was stupid, but, you know, it's kind of a fun little way to get to the other side quickly. Instead, they made it this, like, optional thing, which is fine. It's there, you don't have to do it in any way, which is, again, it's fine. but then they have it being a major part of getting one of the celestial items or weapons. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, you're gonna make it, it's optional to play, you can do it, but now you have to do this stupid, tedious, impossible task. Obviously, it's not impossible, but it's really, really frustrating to get this, 0-0 time from point A to point B by collecting the balloons, dodging the impossibly hard seagulls that come from nowhere. So, to get this item that...
Again... If the minigame had been better...
or just more fun in general, not even I don't know. The seagull thing is really frustrating. The whole game is really frustrating. If it had been a little bit different and maybe a little bit slightly easier to get that, I think it would be more fun. Or... yeah, I don't know. Just make it better in general.
Well, look at Final Fantasy IX's Chocobo Hot and Cold. Mm-hmm. Basic... I thought it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was basic stuff. You got a lot of extra content, even though it wasn't pertinent to the game's story. But then you unlocked... I mean, it did have some story because you learned about the Chocobos.
See?
But you still got important... Your ultimate items. You had played that Chocobo minigame. Like your ultimate weapons and stuff. Or at least 2 of them, I think. So, I think... In that instance, yes, it was frustrating and it was kind of a grind because it was so frustrating. But if it had been more fun and a little bit easier, would have been different.
I think more fun, a little bit easier, and a little bit longer. Maybe have the Chocobo thing in the Thunder Plains.
Yeah.
And have another race in the Thunder Plains, or that Highland Road or whatever.
Oh yeah,
there's so many different ways that you could have gone about this. If you get, under a minute in all of these courses, then you get the specialty thing that you need to get. So, I feel like that there was other ways to go about this to have it not be so frustrating. Now, let's look at a game. Final Fantasy 15 is not a good example. Maybe, I know you haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn, but I think that you can understand where I'm coming from. Horizon Zero Dawn, you have a lot of side stuff that, it's a little grindy. Yeah, it's a little bit similar to the rest of the game, but it adds so much value to the story of the world. Even if it's not story to the main plot of the game, but story to the lore of the world that you're in and world building, right? So you're doing these extra things that really have nothing to do with the main story, but you're learning about the game, and that's what I love. That's what I want, because I want to know more about the everything. In Horizon Zero Dawn, when I played that, I wanted to learn everything about this world and everything that was going on. And I want that experience for mini games. Because Final Fantasy X, there was so much more that could have been explained and deep delve into. Some of these things they kind of talk about in 10.2, and there's the book, the Ultimania that you can read, but that content should be in the main game. Give us more, give us deeper. They have little tidbits that as you're walking around and talking to people you can pick up. But I want hey, if you go and do this thing, it's challenging. Here's an extra dungeon, but we're gonna tell you about something along the way, and that's what I like.
The side quests definitely is more worth it when you get more story, in my opinion. The ultimate weapons, it's, for one thing, I beat this game, if you get the Maga Sisters, you're already OP to actually beat the game. And you've got the Dark Aeons, which makes it, they're hard.
Huh. I didn't even bother with Dark Aeons.
I didn't either. It's more just... It makes the ultimate weapons not necessary. It was so much easier for me to just get all the extra treasures in the Cloister of Trials than it was to just do all the other mini side quests, which some of them were hard and grindy. It was just quicker. It was easier to just, as you go along the game, you're already there. You might as well get the destruction spheres and break the chests. So I definitely think they fell short on doing the side quests, making it worth it. Like there should have been
10 did for sure. Yeah, 10 did for sure. They fell short on the side quests, and we talked about that in the 10 review. But that I think that's the core of what makes a good side quest.
Right.
Is if you're gonna make it grindy, make it fun. If you're gonna make it hard, make it
worth it.
Make it worth it.
Yeah,
exactly.
But on the flip side,
but if you're gonna have it all, or if you're gonna have it a little bit tedious, or above and beyond what would normally be in the game, I want some meat to it. Like all these side quest things felt so empty, and that's what brought up this conversation. These side quests felt so empty that, like, why am I going to even bother doing all this? Like, normally in Final Fantasy games, all the prior ones, there's been a lot of side stuff to do that kind of had more meat to them. Like, yeah, I'm going to go through this dungeon and we're going to tell you a story while we're going through the dungeon of something obscure. Yeah. Like, have an extra character who walks along with you and tells you, you're going through a mine, and explain the mine and the troubles that you had along the way, and have these rich experience all the way through while you're doing this meaningless task to get a special magic or a special summon or whatever.
I think games now, with the exception of making stuff DLC, I think games now generally do more along the lines of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that what maybe, as far as Final Fantasy X is concerned, because this is really what sparked it.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I think if maybe what they were trying to achieve is what games now consider easy, normal, and hard mode, where they were just trying to throw hard mode in there, and their version of hard mode was grind.
I think even the grinding wouldn't be so bad. Like, for 10, post-game, there's not too many places to level grind.
I mean, Omega Ruins, that's where I went.
That's it. But that's literally it.
Yeah.
You can kind of do, like, the double AP and go to some of the later game stuff, like Mount Gagazet or Xanarkand, to do some level grinding. But at some point, getting those sphere levels is so difficult and so grindy that the Omega Ruins even becomes too easy, too tedious.
Well, and repetitive.
So, like, why? Yeah.
And that is, you don't want to be bored doing it either.
Right,
So, I agree.
And, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's not terrible, the side quest stuff in 10. I'm not trying to roast it necessarily. Yeah. But yeah, if I'm going to do all this stuff, in my opinion, if I'm going to do all this stuff, I want it to be fun. And in all the previous Final Fantasy games that I played, there was content there, it was fun, and I did a few extra things. Where in 10, I got to the end and I'm like, I tried doing the Chocobo thing, that was stupid. Yeah. I tried doing the catching thing, and that was okay. But then it was just like
the game.
The Omega Ruins is like above and beyond hard, so like, why am I gonna go? I'm not gonna go through that. I'm just gonna die. I could go and get all the extra
weapons.
No, the summons.
Oh yeah. The extra aeons.
Yeah, aeons. That's the word I was losing. I could go through and get all the extra aeons, but like, I'm already at the very end of the game.
That's
like,
exactly
I could backtrack and get everything, but like, is it really going to help that much? Like, I already know there's like very little story content to the extra Aeon stuff. So like, is it really going to be, is my time doing all that going to benefit me at all? Or can I just go and fight the boss? Like, yeah, if the boss, and we talked about it, if the boss fight was too hard for me, I could backtrack and get either some of the celestial weapons, or I could get the Magus Sisters to make it easier. But like, if I don't have to, let's just do it. Let's just do it and be over with it. where I don't want that to be a dilemma in my mind when I'm playing a game. I want the extra content to be like, I could go fight this, but this extra content is so like enticing that I want to do that instead.
Yeah, because if you need to level grind, well then I'm gonna go and do this side quest because at least I'll learn the more of the story and level up along the way.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think nowadays it's completely different, but for a game like Final Fantasy X, which could have really benefited from extra content, like as far as for some of their characters' backgrounds, because they really had an opportunity to learn about the summoner that Lulu had guarded before this. Full opportunity, even within the cave where you do Yojimbo stuff.
Yeah.
But you did, or you saw some of it on Mount Gagazet. They talked about it. There just was a lot of opportunity, and they didn't.
It's just not there, right?
Yeah.
Well, and even 15, what I remember of 15. Granted, it's been about 5 years since we played 15.
That seemed like it was mostly, well,
they had a few side story stuff that was okay. But then, like, the main beefy side quest stuff, they saved for DLC.
Yeah.
Which should have just been side story, but they decided to opt it to make it DLC, which was an absurd decision.
Most of the in-game side quests was just fetch quests.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what the majority of even Horizon Zero Dawn is the same way. It's just fetch quests. But when you have fetch quests, make them interesting.
Yes.
Like,
because
Assassin's Creed Valhalla, nothing, there was very little, like, main story stuff, but like every place that you went to was like
its own thing,
its own story. Like you could literally, I could load up the game and go to any point that I haven't already explored, and there would be a little story clip just for that scenario. Has nothing to do with the rest of the game, but like someone watching just the side quests, like content of the game in Valhalla would have a good time watching someone play or have a good time playing just side quests without knowing the entirety of the game. Like, I could completely forget, maybe not necessarily how to play the game, but I could forget the entire story of the game and still enjoy the side quests. And I feel like all games should be that way. Like, that should be a focus of... Side quest stuff is optional, but if you do it, you are rewarded with these, you get extra items and you get a little bit of story and a little bit of lore of the land, and,
I agree.
It's fun, and that's what I like. That's what I want.
I do think, though, that there is maybe not as big of a desire for most people, but I think there are still a few who actually enjoy level grinding and doing all of that stuff.
Absolutely. I completely understand, and I think that that's another point to talk about too is the side quests need to have a little bit for everyone. And so you have to look at your audience and decide, okay, there's going to be people who really like the game for the story. So let's have story-driven side quests. There's going to be people who are really enjoying the battle system. Let's have battle system side quest stuff. So by battle system, I mean level grinding and like extra dungeons and super hard bosses and stuff like that. There's going to be people who really like the mini-games. So make the mini-games fun. Like, Blitzball was terrible.
Oh, yeah, it was
terrible. Bad. But, like, if you want to get Wakka's weapon...
Or his backstory.
Yeah, even.
Well, I mean, really, because he was doing Blitzball before he was... decided to do Guardianship full time. Because he even explained before Yuna, he was doing this and Blitzball at the same time. That would have been a great... In fact, I think I would have rather have mandatory played Blitzball through Wakka's story than...
Agreed, yeah. Or, like, do a flashback sequence of Wakka, and then you have to play the Blitzball game or whatever. I'd be alright with that. Like, yeah, Blitzball was terrible, but, like,
Yeah.
So Blitzball... was Final Fantasy X's
sport?
No, it was Final Fantasy X's card game.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, Final Fantasy VIII had a card game where you went around and you could talk to everyone and, play cards. Final Fantasy IX, same thing. You can walk around, talk to everyone, play cards. I think this game, they didn't want to do the card thing, but they still wanted to have something where you could go around and talk to everyone and do an event. And they chose Blitzball because you can go around and you can recruit a lot of characters in the world. And when you recruit them, you have to pay Gil and you have to like level up with them, and then you get to play with them, and some of them are so overpowered that like playing with them you just win instantly, and that's great, but it makes it boring. So the game, basically Blitzball, is either far too hard to the point where you don't win anything, or it's far too easy to the point where you don't have to try. There's no in between. There's no challenge there.
The rewards they're good rewards, but you still have to grind through all of that.
They're
to
good
get the
rewards, but like, is the struggle of leveling up your characters, your Blitzball players, is it worth it? Like,
for some
is it
people,
though?
Because there was, I was looking up, I think it was maybe level 3 spheres.
Yeah.
And that one of the easiest ways was through Blitzball. And I didn't want to do that. That seemed like one of the hardest ways for me. So but I think as far as Blitzball's concerned, I think it could go either way for people.
I think if they just tweaked it a little bit, it would have been more fun.
But as far as, like, I feel like it's just a tiny bit different as far as, well, I don't know. Blitzball was just Blitzball. I didn't like it. It's hard to defend it when I don't like it.
I mean, you're going to have people who like that. That's fine. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that you're a bad person for liking Blitzball. It's more of the game I found so boring that why would it? It's hard to imagine people liking it, though I understand that there are some people who are like, Blitzball is amazing, or I don't know
I think maybe
kind of crazy person that would be, but
you're still reaching some people who would rather play Blitzball than say level grinding.
Sure, yeah, and I guess that's where I was going with that, was that, you know, you have the mini game portion for people who like playing the mini games. For me, like, that Final Fantasy VII was really good with kind of a lot of those things. You had a little bit of story extra content with hunting down the ultimate weapons, and like there was a couple extra dungeons, and then all the extra super bosses for the weapons. But then you also had the like chocobo racing and the chocobo breeding, and you could replay all the motorcycle mini game, and you could replay the snowboarding mini game.
Balanced. It absolutely was well balanced, and it wasn't insanely hard, because really all you needed was time for side quests in that game. Like you needed time, well, a strategy guide in some cases, but just time.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice, because to me, I probably could do the Chocobo side quest if I really sat down and did it, but it was too hard for me just playing through to beat the game.
Well, and I think that's the problem with the Chocobo side quest.
Yeah.
Like, really frustrating. Really, all of them, any side quest, period. You dedicate enough time to it, you're eventually going to get it. And, it's not designed to be impossible. It's just designed to be very hard. And once you get it down, you get a strategy, and you start, once you get the hang of things, you'll pick it up pretty quick. And that goes for literally any video game, so I've learned. But if you're going to do that kind of stuff, it needs to be more fun.
Yeah, it can't... I could tell how frustrated you were getting, because I remember playing this game before and during the Chocobo thing, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's irritating and frustrating, and it takes about any little bit of fun there is, it takes it out of it.
When I played it through, and I got to the Chocobo thing, I wanted to give it a fair shot, mainly because I wanted to see if that was the one thing that I could complete, the one side thing that I could complete. And I played I don't know, maybe a dozen times, give or take. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. It's so absurd. Why would anyone want to play? Why? It's just a waste of time for me.
Honestly, it didn't even make sense. Where were the blitzballs coming from?
Right. Where were the freaking seagulls
I know.
Like, half of the seagulls were hitting you in the face from literally nowhere. They were just, like, there in your face.
It did not make sense. I mean, the balloons made more sense than the other stuff.
Yep.
It definitely could have been better.
Yeah,
They could have sat down and figured something else out within a day, because I could have found something in a day better than that.
Just racing would have been enough. Just racing would have been enough. And again, if you were to do the race in a couple different areas, like the Thunder Plains or anywhere else, I mean, there was a lot of long stretches of road. Just have chocobos and have one person in each area that says, hey, you want to race me? You know, and once you complete all the races, maybe you have maybe you have an easy race at each road. Maybe you have a medium race at each road and a hard race at each road. And each one of those races, if you complete all of them, you get a special item at the end. So I don't know. I'm just possible ideas to have made that better, but the fact is it's not that way. And the way it is, like, it was, for me, it was just a waste of time. If I'm going to do side quests, I want it to be worth my effort of doing it.
I agree.
And not every side quest. And it's fine. You know, again, there needs to be well balanced for everyone. And in Final Fantasy X's case, I felt like there was no side quest stuff for me that met my requirements to want to waste my time doing it.
Womp, womp.
So yeah, let us know.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, what?
The only thing I can say is, actually, if you had done Anima's side quest, you would have gotten a little bit extra story.
I'm aware. I'm aware that Anima has some story behind Seymour and Seymour's mom. I know that that's there.
But that's like the only thing, I think.
I know.
Like one of the if there's anything else, it's not
because I
much.
know that Yojimbo has like nothing. He's just kind of there.
It's the stolen faith.
Right. And the Magus
Sisters,
Sisters, like, there's a lot of challenge to get the Magus Sisters because you have to collect all of the Aeons, but then you also have to fight all of the Aeons to get the Magus Sisters, which is fine. Like, that's worth it. Yeah. But when I was knocking at the door of the main boss of the game, about to beat it, and I'm thinking,
do I want to level up some more? Do I want to beat this game?
Do I want to go and like hunt down the Aeons to be able to do this, or do I want to just go full front and just try and see if I can do it on my own? And the reality was, I just didn't think that it was necessary of wasting my time to go back to try. So, yeah. Yep. Well, guys, let us know your thoughts of side quests and what you think. What
makes a good side quest?
Yeah, what do you think is like the perfect combination of side quests? Is it like well balanced, or do you want like nothing but story driven? I mean, really, even for me, maybe have stuff that kind of meets all the requirements in one. Like have it be a mini game that has story that maybe is grindy at the same time, you know?
Chocobo hot and cold in Final Fantasy IX.
I mean, really, that's not a bad concept.
I will say, I feel like, well, I don't want to say Final Fantasy IX was the best. I thought that they did their side quests really good, though.
Sure.
7's was pretty good, too. And I don't know enough about 8's side quests, I guess, to really say.
It's funny because in Final Fantasy VIII, you get so far and like everything locks up. Once you make it to Disc 3, they have so much like... they put so many FMVs in Disc 3 that they had to
make cuts somewhere.
They had to cut all the towns out to make room for the...
8's map is very open and just there's land and there's a few like spots that you can visit. I don't feel like it's as full of a world as 7's was.
8's world was kind of desolate. Yeah, I would have preferred something a little more...
I think, though... Between 7 and 9, great well-rounded side quests.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
So, next November 1st, we're gonna have another podcast episode. Kind of talked about it already. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to play. It's going to be something smaller because
We busy.
yeah, we're very busy. Actually, October and November is very busy for me. I've got a couple vacation trips planned. So we're going to kind of work around those, play a couple smaller games. I'm not going to be streaming for a few months, but we're kind of talking about playing Final Fantasy 11 maybe early
Next year.
early
maybe.
next year, right? I'm really nervous about that. We'll probably talk more about that in the next Zap Chats, but yeah, until then, guys, thank you all so much for hanging out and listening to this podcast episode, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.